The most dangerous breakthroughs in war don't always come from generals, labs, or defense budgets. Sometimes they come from people the battlefield was never designed to account for. Someone without rank, without authority, without permission. In this case, someone young enough that no military doctrine ever planned around them. And that's why this story matters, because when modern war breaks, it rarely breaks where power expects it to. By 2026, Russia believed it had finally solved one of the most expensive problems in modern warfare: how to kill soldiers without risking soldiers. The solution was not a new tank, it was not air power, it was not a breakthrough missile, it was drones. Not a few, not elite units, not a limited capability, but saturation. FPV drones hunting infantry, surveillance drones hovering over trenches, cheap quadcopters turning every movement into a potential death sentence. This strategy did not appear overnight. It was built methodically through 2024. It scaled brutally through 2025. And by 2026, it was supposed to be unstoppable. The logic was simple, and from Moscow's perspective, elegant. If you flood the battlefield with drones, the enemy runs out of options. You cannot hide, you cannot maneuver, you cannot move without being seen, and eventually you cannot survive. For Ukraine, this became one of the deadliest phases of the war. Russian FPV drones were no longer novelty weapons or experimental tools. They were everywhere, flying low, appearing suddenly, striking before soldiers had time to react. They did not need to be advanced. They did not need to be precise. They just needed to be cheap, fast, and numerous. And they were. Russia scaled production aggressively. Thousands per day, millions per year planned. Some built domestically. Others assembled using foreign components routed through shell companies and gray market suppliers. The cleanliness of the supply chain did not matter. Output did. On the ground, the effect was brutal. FPV drones became one of the leading causes of casualties. Soldiers were hit while moving between positions, while resupplying, while evacuating wounded comrades. Even miles behind the front line, nowhere felt safe. And here is where the problem deepened. Ukraine did not have a clean answer. High-end air defense systems were useless against small, fast, low-flying drones. Electronic warfare worked until Russia adapted. Jamming worked until fiber optic guidance appeared. Shotguns helped, but only at dangerously close range. Rifles demanded impossible precision under stress. Every solution either cost too much, arrived too late, or worked inconsistently, which was exactly what Russia was counting on, because Russia was not trying to win with brilliance. It was trying to win with exhaustion. Force Ukraine to spend expensive missiles on cheap targets. Force soldiers to choose between movement and survival. Force commanders to accept losses as unavoidable. This was supposed to be Russia's asymmetric advantage, a drone war Ukraine could not afford to fight. And for a while, it looked like it was working. Then something quietly changed. Not on a factory floor, not in a NATO lab, not through a new weapon system unveiled at a defense expo, but exactly where Russia least expected resistance to come from, at the individual soldier level. Because while Russia was flooding the battlefield with drones, Ukraine was rethinking the most basic question of all. Not how to destroy drones from the sky, but how to survive them up close. And that shift would expose a vulnerability in Russia's drone strategy that volume alone could not fix. Russia's drone strategy worked for one reason above all others. It pushed the cost of survival onto the individual soldier. Every Ukrainian infantryman was forced to think about drones before thinking about the enemy, before movement, before resupply, before evacuation, before sleep. That pressure wasn't accidental. It was strategic. Russia understood something fundamental about modern warfare. You don't need to annihilate an army to break it. You only need to make survival feel random, constant, and unavoidable. FPV drones did exactly that. They didn't need to destroy entire units. They only needed to kill one soldier at a time, often unpredictably, often brutally, often without warning, and they did. That is why Russia leaned so heavily into volume. Cheap drones meant losses didn't matter. A missed strike was irrelevant. A drone destroyed by a rifle or a shotgun was still a win if it forced soldiers to stop moving, stop thinking, stop acting. The battlefield slowed, fear did the rest. But there was a hidden assumption baked into this strategy, that the soldier at the receiving end would always be the weakest link, that infantry would remain reactive, that survival would depend on systems far above them: electronic warfare, air defense, command decisions, external protection. Russia assumed the individual soldier had no agency in a drone-saturated battlefield, and for a while that assumption looked correct. Ukraine's countermeasures were fragmented. Some units had jammers, others didn't. Some experimented with shotguns, others relied on luck. Some adapted quickly, others paid the price. Nothing was standardized. Nothing was reliable. Nothing worked everywhere. That inconsistency was deadly, but it also revealed something important. The problem wasn't that Ukraine lacked advanced technology. The problem was that Ukraine lacked something simple, cheap, and universal, something every soldier could carry, something that didn't rely on power, sensors, networks, or vehicles, something that worked at the exact moment when a drone was already too close. Because that's where most drone kills actually happen. Not at long range, not in open airspace, but in the final seconds when a drone is diving, when there's no time to call for help, and when there is no second chance. That moment exposed the flaw in Russia's approach. By pushing drones down to the lowest level of combat, Russia unintentionally created a battlefield where the most valuable countermeasure would also have to exist at that same level. Not in headquarters, not in air defense batteries, but in the hands of the soldier being hunted. And that realization forced Ukraine to ask a different question. Not how to outproduce Russia drone for drone, not how to jam them all, not how to shoot them down from afar, but how to give every single soldier a fighting chance when the drone was already coming. That question didn't lead to a billion-dollar system. It didn't lead to a NATO contract. It didn't lead to a Defense Expo announcement. It led to something far smaller, far cheaper, and far more dangerous to Russia's drone strategy than Moscow ever expected, because the solution didn't come from Ukraine's defense industry. It didn't come from the state, and it didn't come from a general. It came from someone Russia never planned for. And that's where this story turns. Once Ukraine accepted that it couldn't outproduce Russia drone for drone, the logic of the battlefield began to change. This was no longer about air dominance. It wasn't about factories or technology races between states. It became about time, specifically the last few seconds before impact, because that's where most FPV drone kills actually happen. Not at long range, not during flight, but at the moment when a drone dives low, fast, and close, when jamming has already failed and air defense is irrelevant. That final approach is brutal. There's no margin, no backup, no second attempt. If the soldier can't react in that moment, the outcome is already decided. Russia built its drone doctrine around this reality. Cheap drones, disposable pilots, relentless pressure, and a belief that the defender would always be slower than the attacker. What Russia didn't expect was that Ukraine would stop trying to intercept drones from the outside. Instead, Ukraine began redesigning survival from the inside. The first realization was uncomfortable. There was no perfect system coming, no universal jammer, no magic shield, no technology that would suddenly erase drones from the battlefield. So Ukraine stopped chasing perfection. It started chasing probability, not how do we stop every drone, but how do we improve survival odds when it matters most. That question immediately ruled out most existing solutions. Missiles were too expensive, vehicle-mounted systems were too limited, electronic warfare was inconsistent, shotguns were useful but unreliable. Standard rifle fire demanded near impossible precision under stress. The answer had to be cheap, instant, intuitive, and scalable. It had to work without new training, without new weapons, and without external support. It had to function when fear was highest and time was lowest. That's where the story becomes uncomfortable for Russia, because the solution spreading through Ukrainian units didn't look like a weapon system at all. It didn't require new platforms or doctrinal rewrites. It didn't depend on command approval. It was simply ammunition that behaved differently in the air. Instead of demanding perfect aim, it expanded the kill zone. Instead of rewarding calm precision, it rewarded fast reaction. Instead of turning soldiers into drone hunters, it turned rifles into last resort shields. At first, it spread quietly. One unit tested it, another Another requested it. A third refused to operate without it. Reports kept coming back the same way. Soldiers survived encounters that would have killed them weeks earlier. Drones were neutralized mid-dive. FPV attacks failed not because they were jammed or intercepted, but because they never reached their target. And that's when the most dangerous part of this story becomes clear. Russia's drone strategy depended on fear flowing in one direction, on soldiers feeling hunted, on movement feeling suicidal. But once infantry regained agency at close range, the psychological balance shifted. The drone stopped being an unstoppable executioner. It became a threat that could be confronted, sometimes imperfectly, sometimes clumsily, but often successfully. And here's the detail that changes everything. This solution didn't originate in a state lab. It didn't come from Ukraine's defense ministry. It wasn't designed by career engineers or generals. It came from someone who was never supposed to matter in a war like this, someone Russia's drone doctrine never accounted for. At this point in the war, Russia expected one thing: that if Ukraine found an answer to FPV drones, it would come from above, from NATO, from Western defense firms, from classified labs, from billion-dollar contracts announced at press conferences. That's how modern war is supposed to work, but this time it didn't. The countermeasure spreading through Ukrainian units didn't come from a ministry or a contractor, and the person who cracked the problem didn't wear a uniform. One of the most discussed versions came from a teenager, an 18-year-old Ukrainian civilian with no military rank, no defense background, no factory, and no state funding. Just a problem that needed solving and no patience for waiting. While Russia flooded the battlefield with drones, he watched soldiers die from a distance that felt unbearable. FPV drones weren't statistics to him. They were the reason people didn't come home. He understood something Russian planners never bothered to consider. You don't need to dominate the sky to beat a drone. You only need to survive the last few seconds. So instead of designing a new weapon, he focused on the moment every FPV attack converges on: close range, high speed, no margin for error. And instead of asking how to hit a drone perfectly, he asked a smarter question: how do you make missing less lethal? The result was deceptively simple. A modified round fired from standard infantry weapons. No new rifles, no special optics, no retraining. Just ammunition that behaved differently after leaving the barrel. Instead of staying intact, the round destabilized mid-flight and fragmented predictably, creating a dense cloud of fast-moving fragments in front of the shooter. Suddenly, a rifle shot no longer required pinpoint accuracy. The bullet didn't need to hit the drone directly. It only needed to pass close enough. Propellers shattered, cameras failed, guidance was lost. FPV drones fell seconds before impact. This wasn't theory. Frontline units tested it. They asked for more. They started carrying it as a standard defensive measure. And here's the part Russia really didn't see coming. Ukraine didn't treat anti-drone ammo as a novelty. It began codifying and standardizing it for wider use. That matters. Codification means consistent production, safety testing, and quality control. It means this isn't a gimmick or a one-off experiment. It means Ukraine intends to issue this at scale. Every infantry unit, every frontline position, every soldier with a rifle. The barrier to adoption was almost non-existent. Soldiers didn't need to learn anything new. All that changed was what happened after the trigger was pulled. And suddenly, Russia's drone doctrine had a problem. Because saturation only works when the defender feels helpless. Volume only works when the last line of defense fails. This ammunition didn't make drones obsolete. It didn't erase the threat. It didn't guarantee survival. But it did something far more dangerous to Russia's strategy. It gave infantry confidence, and confidence changes behavior. Soldiers moved again, units repositioned, evacuations became possible, FPV drones stopped being automatic death sentences, all because one teenager refused to accept that the answer had to come from the top. That's where the drone war starts turning. What makes this development dangerous for Russia isn't the ammunition itself, it's what it quietly dismantles. Russia's drone strategy was never built around precision. It was built around inevitability. FPV drones didn't need to be accurate every time. They didn't need to survive. They only needed to make one thing feel certain to the soldier on the ground, that once a drone committed, the outcome was already decided. That certainty was the weapon. It shaped behavior long before impact. It slowed movement, it delayed evacuations, it turned hesitation into self-preservation. Entire units began planning around avoidance rather than action, not because orders demanded it, but because the psychological cost of moving felt too high. Once infantry believes that certainty is gone, even partially, the entire logic fractures, because a drone that can be beaten at the last moment is no longer inevitable. And a threat that isn't inevitable stops shaping behavior the same way. Russia can respond in familiar ways. It can build more drones, improve guidance, increase range, add fiber optic control, harden electronics, refine tactics. All of that is possible, but none of it addresses the core problem. Every FPV drone, no matter how advanced, still has to commit. It still has to descend. It still has to enter that final exposed envelope where physics takes over and reaction time matters more than software. And now that space is no longer uncontested. To fix that, Russia would need to redesign the drone itself, not incrementally, but structurally. Faster approaches reduce control. Higher altitudes reduce accuracy, armor adds weight and cost. Smarter autonomy increases complexity and failure points. Every solution chips away at the one advantage that made FPVs decisive in the first place. Cheap, expendable saturation, that's the trap Russia walked into. If drones stay cheap, they fail more often. If they become survivable, they stop being cheap. And once they stop being cheap, saturation collapses. There isn't a clean third path where volume, cost, reliability, and psychological dominance all coexist. The consequences don't arrive as a single dramatic reversal. They stack quietly. If infantry can defend itself at close range, Ukraine doesn't need to treat every drone as a strategic threat. Commanders gain flexibility, units reposition instead of freezing, supply runs happen with less delay, casualty evacuation stops being a gamble. The battlefield doesn't become safe, but it becomes negotiable again. Those are small shifts individually. Together, they change the tempo of the war. This doesn't end the drone war. It redistributes control within it, and the message travels far beyond Ukraine. Modern warfare obsesses over scale, more platforms, more sensors, more production, more automation, but scale creates blind spots. It encourages the belief that solutions must come from the top, from institutions, from budgets, from programs measured in years. Russia assumed the answer would arrive that way. Instead, it came from the ground. From urgency, from improvisation, from someone who didn't wait for permission or funding cycles or doctrinal approval. That's the real lesson here. Not that an 18-year-old defeated Russia, but that Russia built a strategy so rigid, so volume-dependent, and so psychologically leveraged that a modest shift at the infantry level could disrupt it. This is how modern wars actually turn, not through single decisive strikes, not through wonder weapons, but through small advantages that remove fear, restore agency, and force the opponent to spend more effort for less effect. Russia believed drones would end maneuver warfare. Instead, they revealed how dependent Russia had become on them. And once a strategy becomes a crutch, breaking it doesn't require matching it at scale. It only requires removing its certainty. That's what just happened.